Hey guys, how's it going? Just going to do a quick little walkthrough of some of the changes to Notigen that were made recently. As we got into development of the pipeline, the Oahu pipeline stuff in a little more detail, we really needed some proper notifications to come through. Notigen was created for simulating events as they would come through OpenStack, but the way it was done initially was it sort of just made a poor man's version of a notification. It didn't have all the keys in it that you needed. You know, some of them were there, but in some cases they were spelled incorrectly, or the ordering was wrong, or whatever. It was just something to get going, just to generate some events. But now we really need notifications that are just like OpenStack in production. So what we did was we took one of our production databases, and or one of our staging databases, sorry, and I wrote this little script here called template gen. So if you go to the Notigen repo in the bin directory, there's a template gen file here, which you can point to a StackTach.v3 database, a MySQL database, and it will figure out all the operations that occur within, let's say, a 24-hour period. So you'll see operation, and when I say an operation is like a resize an instance, or create an instance, or delete an instance, or snapshot, or one of these types of things. That's full operation. But an operation may have within it, as you know, like a couple of events, or it could have a couple of dozen events. There's some that we see in there that have 50 or 60 events with it. So you could have, for example, a create instance operation that goes to the scheduler, goes down to the compute node, it fails, it goes back to the scheduler, it goes back to the compute node, it fails, it goes back to the scheduler, it goes back to the compute node. That happens over and over again, so you end up with like 60 events before the thing actually fails. But it's a great template to experiment with and to work with in the pipelines. So that's what we've got going on here. Just going to move the microphone a little bit. So what it does is it goes through, and it more importantly, it pulls all this information out, and then it replaces any sensitive data that's in there: tenant IDs, auth tokens, instance IDs, IP addresses, and it just replaces them with a template. So a placeholder, like you'll see here, right? So you'll see something like that, and then Notigen will read those templates and use those to recreate the events in the order that they should appear in, with all the proper key values and everything in place, which is kind of slick. One other thing that it does that's kind of neat is for date-time values, it replaces those with placeholders as well, but we keep a record of the relative time differences between when the first operation was seen and all the date time values that are inside the template. So if we want to create do a create instance operation at 2 o'clock, and then we issue another one at 3 o'clock, all the date and time information will adjust and be relative, so they're spaced properly, just as they were in the staging environment. So this is an example of a template here. The first thing that you get is a dictionary that just gives Notigen some hints about how to recreate it. So an XUUID is a UUID without any dashes in it as separators. It's just one big hex string, and it says that there's 26 unique XUUIDs inside this series of events inside this template. There are 3 IPv4 addresses. There's a bunch of date times, and then these are the days, seconds, and milliseconds relative to the start of the operation. And Notigen will take all its information and will create the templates properly. It also says here's some there's 26 unique UUIDs. These are hyphenated ones, and there's no IPv6 addresses in here. And then we see the first, in this case here, this is a create start operation, and the 23 up here says there's 23 notifications inside this operation. So this is the first operation. This is the first event that will get generated, which in this case is a compute instance update. And you can see all this important stuff like the request ID, the auth token, the user ID, all gets replaced. Reservation ID, the host name, which node it occurred on, the display name. So down here we see an image ref, and it's got an IP4 address followed by a UUID. So all that stuff gets replaced, but you see everything else in here is the same as it should be in a production environment. And then here's the next event coming in right behind it, which is a scheduler run instance start. And there's a whole bunch of gory details about that. And then we get a little farther, and then we see a scheduler run instance scheduled, and then yada yada. The whole process goes through. And again, all the date times for these are relative. So the timestamp field is a relative date time from the beginning. The other thing that we track is this other template here, which is the end of day exists record. So same structure at the top. You know, these are your hints for rebuilding the template. Again, you don't have to deal with this. This is just something that Notigen uses. But now we've got a compute instance exists record, and this is the one that would get created automatically by the Nova audit system. And it will have things like the audit period beginning and the audit period ending, so that you can right here, so that you can correctly compute your usage information. So that's all pretty handy. If you look at the Notigen file, which is in Notigen underscore dunder init file. It's a pretty simple thing to call. You don't have to go through all this gory detail, but one of the little tests for it is built right into it, so you can just run this to get an example for it. Before I do that, I'll just show you that in the repo we also include all the templates for most of the major operations. So we've got 4 different compute instance create operations. This one is 23 length, 24 length, 25 length, and this is a failing one that went to 65 events. There's a couple of different deletes, power offs, rebuilds. See, here's a failing rebuild. Resizes, preps, you know, a lot of good stuff in there. So this can give you a pretty good indication of how things are, how things operate inside of OpenStack. So this little sort of integration test, if you will, shows how to use it. You can run Notigen in real-time mode, where it will generate events in real time. So there will actually be time delays between when each of these notifications are published. The nice thing about that is, if you really want to do a load test environment, you can run multiple Notigens and have all these overlapping events coming in there. But I mean, it can pound out quite a few events very quickly if you really need to load it up. But if you want to simulate notifications coming from multiple sources, you could run multiple Notigens if you wanted to. So all you do is you create an event generator, you specify where the template directory is, and you tell it how many operations per hour you want to issue. So operations per hour, again, an operation is, let's say, a create instance, and if I wanted to do 1 operation per hour, then it will only issue them at that rate. But remember, an operation could have many events. So even though I've only issued 1 create instance operation, I could actually see 50 or 60 events come out of that. And now if you get into multiple events per hour, or multiple operations per hour, let's say in this case I'm doing 3,600 operations per hour, which is about 1 every second, those are really going to start to pile up. So the first one's going to start, the next second, and another operation's going to start, the next second, another operation's going to start. But the first operation hasn't really finished yet, so you're going to start to see the compounding of all these events from all these sort of queued up operations taking place, and they'll all roll out in proper time ordering, which is really the power of Notigen, is that it keeps all that stuff sort of meshed together. Once you've got the generator created, you just periodically call generate, and you tell it what time to work with, and it'll return you a list of events that happened in that time span. And in this case, we're just going to print them out. If this is in real time, we're going to sleep for a little bit, just so we're not running our CPU up. You can call it as fast as you want if you want. Or if you want to run it full tilt, so generate all those events all at once, you can just call move to next tick, and that will update your date time field to the next place where something of interest is happening. So let's just do a little example here. So I'll just run it again. I'll run the init program directly. It's just loaded all the templates, and now at this time, for 3,600 operations an hour, you see we get a 1 second tick coming through here, and we're getting these different operations. Let me just resize this a little bit. Right, so we had a bunch of compute instance updates going through. So these are operations that are just starting, and now you're starting to see some of these double up. Right, so some of the earlier operations are starting to pick up a little bit, starting to do more things. So in one time tick, now down here we've got 3 events coming through. So in 1 second we had 3 events that sort of came through at around the same time. And the longer this runs, the more and more of these events that are going to overlap and compound in here, which makes it great for testing. But again, this is running in real time. So if you wanted to simulate a real OpenStack environment, you can just run this in this manner. What I'll do here is I will change this to be false and restart this. And it's just going to plow through. And so in this example that I'm running here, I'm running for 24 hours. And the reason I run for 24 hours is because when it crosses the midnight mark, that's when it will generate all the .exist records. And those are really useful. Well, actually, they're sort of mandatory if you want to do any sort of reliable usage and billing operations. So this little simulator here is just going to go for a 24-hour period. So at least then we know that we're going to get all of our exist records coming through. If we look at the time over here, you can see we're at 1,900 hours once we get up to 2,400 hours. And just, I mean, have a look here at the number of operations that have compounded here that are coming through within a 1 second interval, and it's only going to get, you know, bigger and bigger and bigger. So we'll just let that go. I mean, this is just going to race and race and race. It's going to just have a lot of stuff go through there. But that's another way that if you just want to load up your RabbitMQ and really, you know, pound it so that you can run a bunch of different Yaggies and read it as fast as possible and check for race conditions and stuff, this is a great way to do it. So anyway, short little video. Just wanted to show you about Notigen and some of the improvements that we just made to it. You can use this for any project. This is not something that is only dedicated to StackTach, but if you need to simulate notifications coming out of OpenStack, particularly Nova, this is a great way to do it. Okay, if you have any questions, just put them in the comment field below. Thanks.